meeting to order. Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising such notice in the Home News Tribune, the Asbury Park Press, the Board Office, the schools, and on Cablevision Channel 118 and Verizon Fios Channel 24, and by filing such notice with the Township Clerk. This meeting was scheduled for Thursday, May 4th, 2022. The Board will meet to officially act upon the adoption of the 2022-23 school year budget. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Weber. The Old Bridge Township Board of Education acknowledges that the law of this state establishes that members of the public, including members of the board, have the right to record public board meetings using audio or video recording devices, provided that that act of recording does not interfere with the business of this public board meeting. Therefore, the board makes it known that any such recording is to be considered the private recording of the individual and in no manner represents the official record of this board. The board therefore takes no responsibility for such private recording and completely disavows any future use. Ms. Burns? Ms. Callie?
Here.
Mr. Giordano?
Here.
Ms. Lent?
Here.
Mr. Marquetta?
Here.
Mr. Slade? Mr. Silikowski? Mr. Weber? Quorum exists.
We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Joseph. Presentation.
Just before we go on the presentation, I just wanted to apprise the board of information. I'm sure the board has received emails relative to the planetarium. To be clear, there's no intention by the board administration to close the planetarium. It was a temporary personnel move to get us through the S2 losses of state aid as we're looking to reduce positions to make up for that $3.5 million approximately we lost. Before we go into that, and I'm not sure, I'm sure some people from the public would speak to that, we do want to provide the board with some options, if it's the will of the board. So looking at some of the positions we have, some of the retirements we may have had, and looking at through personnel, though this board supported the personnel structuring that we provided you with, that included a reduction of a curator for the planetarium, we could look at other personnel moves, put that position back, and look at other moves that may have a less of an impact to the board, but would still impact sections or opportunities for students, but it wouldn't eliminate any programs. It wouldn't reduce any programs. So it would just mostly result in a reduction of a section or an opportunity for maybe an elective somewhere. That's an option. If the board would like to do that, the administration can make that move. Like I said, with limited impact to the students or the community. It's not an official action. Again, this is something that we went through the budget process that the board supported, so the public knows we can't have a meeting and discuss these things prior to this because we're bound by having our meetings in public for transparency's sake. So if that is something that the board would like to do a straw poll for us, we can support that.
I just want a clarification first, Mr. Cittadino. We've also been told recently that the planetarium itself needs major refurbishing. Is that correct?
It doesn't need major refurbishing to operate. It would need, it would be good to have some upgrades to software and chairs, but it doesn't need it to operate tomorrow or next year.
All right, and to the point of doing anything physical in the room, et cetera, that would be payable out of capital funds, Joe? All right. So therefore, that part of it has no impact on this budget
That
at
is
all?
correct, and
Okay.
at the end of this summer, we could be in a better position, capital reserve-wise, as we look through some
Understood.
of the real estate transactions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cittadino?
Do you want to do a straw poll of the board first?
Yeah.
Ms. Callie, do you support reclassification of a portion of the existing budget to, Dave, you want to just clarify?
Yeah, it would not affect or change the bottom line of the budget as being proposed. It's just the reallocation of funds from one personnel area to another personnel area. And it is my belief administratively that as we move forward, we've had some retirements and so forth, it'll have a less of an impact. You know, when you put the budget together, starting in January, February, you don't know what you have at that point. At this point, I could say that, you know, we could make some moves that would allow us to do that if it's the will of the board.
So are we,
So the retirements and such that we have had would kind of set that off? Because you said, I'm sorry, Mr. Cittadino, you said something about, you know, possibly removing an elective or something else. So I'm
Mhm.
just,
Again, so if someone, it's
So if
not
I vote-
it's not a financial, but as we see change, but if someone, as we have retirements and we can do without that position, if people retire, you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So if someone retires in a position we can do without based upon enrollment next year, then we'll do it through that method. But it will not, we do not have the ability or funds through breakage or so forth, is what I'm saying, to just eliminate another, you know, to add to the cost. It would be through, again, looking at our personnel as people retire. Do we need this section of this opportunity or class in the high school? Maybe not. Do we need it at the middle school? Maybe not. I'm confident that we will be able to get to that point based upon the numbers that we're seeing right now in retirements.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Since the date that this was sent up to the county and approved, have we had any retirements?
yes.
All right, so presumably there's enough money from those retirements possibly to cover what is, if it's just left as it is in the budget, and that can be done after the fact, correct?
I believe on the last agenda, there were 3 retirements. So, and the budget was sent up in the middle of March, and those retirements were reflected on the April agenda. So
All
the
right.
answer is yes.
Just to add to the personnel issue, we continually look at the staffing. We look at the enrollment and we look at, as they're doing the schedules, particularly at the high school, if there's any sections that we could potentially move, that's where we'll find and be able to reallocate the staff.
Again, because, you know, we present this to you February, and we have to base it upon the personnel we have at the time. And as we move through February, March, April, things change. We can feel as though, in this particular instance, if it's the will of the board, based upon the information we've provided you, you could take a straw poll and tell us to maintain the curator position at Sauk School.
And is it less complicated to leave it be and then restore it when we know where the money actually is?
No.
My preference as the BA is to never change the budget at the budget hearing unless it's absolutely necessary. And I think what Mr. Cittadino is proposing is an effective way to modify the budget after the fact. It's a very clean way. If I have to change the budget, it affects numerous areas, and it will probably take me a few days to redo the
All
budget.
right. So
But
we
what
can-
he's proposing works for me.
All right, so you support the polling question as it's been rendered, correct then?
I do.
All right, fine, thank you.
Are all board members clear on what we're doing a straw poll on?
So, I'm sorry, again, very loud. So, basically, the planetarium was never going to get shut. they were just removing the person who runs it, right?
That's
Yes?
correct.
When we went through the budget process, as you know, there was 40-something positions. When we were believing that there was going to be up to a $9 million loss in
Mhm.
state aid based upon previous projections from the state of New Jersey. We went through all the positions. We went through the ones that are mandated. Obviously, having a planetarium curator is great. It's a luxury. It's something we're known for, but it's not a mandated position.
Mhm.
So we went through all of those, and as we received our state aid of less than losing $3.5 million, many of the positions went back. As we went through this process with the board, that position didn't go back. It wasn't that we were shuttering the planetarium forever. It was that until we get out of the S2, we may not be able to, because it's not mandated, have that type of position at this time. If the board would like to have it for next year, it's easily just saying, fund that position for next year.
I think that, I mean, I'm good with that. I just wanted to give people clarification because of all the emails we received. It's just to give them something to base what we're going to do on.
So
You understand? So,
if we're, well, first of all, I just want to make it clear that that particular teacher wasn't leaving.
No.
No, he was just being reassigned. So if we close the planetarium for a year, he's there, still with us, to open it back up again. Are we,
We have other teachers trained in the planetarium as well.
okay. So, I
I'll
keep
give you
it-
an
I keep-
example that we have the planetarium up at the GNC, and we did not have a specific curator, but we had staff that are trained to operate the planetarium. So, and another component for this particular year, we didn't operate the planetarium at full capacity because we had COVID restrictions of bringing students and travel, and our elementary students did not visit the planetarium. So that was part of the options in moving forward and reassigning staff. But by reducing that position for the year, it impacts a particular staff member by reassigning, but does not impact them as having a position within the district.
so the straw poll will keep the planetarium open, yes? It'll keep the curator, okay?
keep the curator
Which in
that
turn
position.
will keep it running?
Yes.
Okay, so,
But it could run without
No.
that position.
It takes a special.
I apologize,
Well, it takes a special set of skills, and no one, the other personnel are not located at that school. So if we were to reassign them, they wouldn't be available at the school that they're at currently, serving the students that they are on this campus. So, yes and no.
okay, so by keeping the curator in his position
Mhm.
and leaving the planetarium open, we're just looking at maybe we don't need a section here or a section there. We're not cutting another program. That's my fear. I don't want to vote to keep the planetarium open and then find out that we're cutting something, cutting a program for other students. I've said this since the beginning of S2. If you're cutting A, the A people are going to be upset. B people aren't going to be upset until you say, okay, we're not cutting A, we're going to cut B, and then all the B people come out. And I know that we've made cuts in the past that have been reversed. We one year cut some of the after-school courtesy busing and brought it back. Years prior to that, we had instituted freshman sports teams for certain sports that didn't previously had them. And then the following year, they were cut, and then a year or two later, they were brought back. So it's not like it would be a permanent thing.
Okay, yes, I understand that, and without going too much deep into personnel, which I can't do here, I'm confident to tell you that through just this straw poll, and it's a courtesy straw poll because personnel happens within administration, but I don't want to say that we went through this process and then doing something different than you gave us the green light for back in February. So, by doing so, you're going to be able to maintain that position, which will maintain that program, and it's a good year for it, you know. We're moving forward, post-pandemic, hopefully, with everything as normal as possible. It's good to have that back for the 22-23 school year, and we will make adjustments that will not eliminate a program.
Then yes.
Okay, so all
At
board,
this point, I forgot how the question was phrased.
Just,
No,
so
no.
are all board members clear on what we're doing the straw poll?
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Callie,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Ms. Lent,
Yes.
Mr. Marqueta,
Yes.
Mr. Sulikowski,
Yes.
and Mr. Weber.
People that have already given notice of retirement in March, which are not calculated into this formula, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And we have the potential for losing another one or two employees before the year is out. So that should cover any financial part of it and shouldn't have any impact on cutting anybody else. Is that correct, Dave?
that is correct.
Thank you.
We're ready, Mr. Weber? So again, I would just like to welcome everyone to the public hearing to adopt the 2022-23 budget for the Old Bridge Township Board of Education. The outline for tonight's meeting will be as follows. Board members and administrative team will be introduced. Mr. Cittadino and/or Dr. Hoker will discuss student activities, district accomplishments, and priorities. I will discuss appropriations, revenue, taxes, and Mr. Cittadino will do a final summary, and then we will open the meeting for public comment. First, I'd like to introduce the members of the board. Mr. Weber is the president. Mrs. Lisa Lent is the vice president. Ms. Teresa Burns, who's not here tonight, is a board member. Mrs. Callie, Mr. Giordano, Mr. Marqueta, Mr. Slade is not present tonight, and Mr. Sulikowski. And we do have one vacancy on the board that is being discussed in the near future. Mr. Cittadino is the superintendent of schools. I'm Joe Mara, the business administrator and board secretary. Dr. Hoker is the assistant superintendent of schools. And Dr. Tui, who is out in the audience, is assistant superintendent of educational programs. With that, I will move this over to Mr. Cittadino.
All right, as we begin the presentation, you can see our proposed budget presentation begins with the image that definitely defines the teamwork of our community. Great picture from the Harlem Wizards event organized by SEPTA. It brought staff together from across the district and families and students, all the while making better opportunities for our students in the classroom.
Mr. Cittadino, could you just tell CJ when you'd like her to move the slide?
Sure,
please?
she's in a great place right now. This budget supports our students and their learning within the classrooms. Their learning that they do after school, and they do and their social and emotional wellness even during recess. Our high school students are, of course, the end product of our educational opportunities and learning that takes place within the district. We're very proud of our high school our students and their accomplishments. They excelled. Here we see that our indoor percussion, which came away from the World Championships as silver medalists. We're very proud of them there. Our ROTC program continues to bring home awards and accolades not only locally, but from across the nation. Our student athletes compete, and they do so very well. And this young lady was the state champion in female wrestling. And our academics and the arts are also supported. These are just samples of our students in each of those genres, showing what they've learned and their proud work that's displayed through our art program. And all of this wouldn't be possible without having a great team around us. And our team, this week, we celebrate and recognize Teacher Appreciation Week, and it wouldn't be possible without them. Everyone from maintenance, transportation, our support staff, our secretarial staff, our paraprofessionals. We see in this presentation Ms. Nancy Coughlin, who was recognized as a state ESP of the Year. So it would be fitting to have her obviously in here as part of Team Old Bridge. And also in there is Dan Domino, who is the County Athletic Director of the Year. And Dan was honoring Ron Mazzola, a very long-lasting member of our community and our team that we will definitely miss. Dr. Hoker.
Thank you. Good evening. District accomplishments for 2021-22. Old Bridge schools reopened for in-person learning in September and remained open at full capacity throughout the school year. We implemented weekly testing protocols for all unvaccinated staff according to the New Jersey Department of Education requirements. The district worked with local agencies to provide on-site COVID vaccinations and testing for staff, students, and community members. And the district adapted to the road back guidance from the state of New Jersey. Continued accomplishments, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our DEI team established awareness and set monthly goals for training at the district, school, and department levels. Student and staff participation in Central Jersey Consortium for Excellence in Equity. Student-led DEI training for administrators took place. The Board of Education created an ad hoc DEI committee. We have administrator training in inclusive education provided by the New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education, and the presenter is CEO Fred Batiglione. The district participation in Central Jersey Program for the Recruitment of Diverse Educators, CJ Pride. We partnered with Teacher Coach and Effective School Solutions to provide mental health and SEL professional resources for staff, students, and parents. We have received 46 education programs were awarded for promising practices by character.org. PEAK training, PEAK training for district BCBAs to turnkey assessments in ABA and MD programs took place. The implementation of IXL as a benchmarking tool for all English and math K through 8 and Old Bridge High School 9 through 12 courses. Expansion of Nearpod software to middle school. Project READ training on written expression and linguistic strands for high school special education reading teachers. The continuation of standardized data collection and graphing procedures in secondary ABA and MD programs. Effective School Solutions program at the EMGNC and Old Bridge High School were filled to support maximum number of students. The implementation of data integration specialists, grades K through 12, and the implementation of the math coach and mental health coach for this school year. Supplemental education programs offered grades K through 12 were offered to grades K through 12 for struggling learners. The continued use of Brigance 3 IED curriculum-based measurement to assess progress in preschool disabled classrooms. Introduction of lively letters and Project READ K through 2 district-wide. Grade 3 Project READ phonics training was provided. Integrated all elementary self-contained classrooms into general education-related arts to promote inclusion throughout the district. And trained IXL trainers throughout the district to turnkey training, provide coaching, and continued professional development throughout the year. Seal of Biliteracy, awarded to 39 students, recognizing biliteracy in Chinese, French, Spanish, German, Italian, as well as Arabic, Polish, and Hindi. 3 Old Bridge High School students, I sincerely hope that I pronounced the names correctly, Armand Dulat, Asem Abukir, Dominique Siparsky, earned seals in 2 languages. Old Bridge High School World Language Honor Society inducted 136 students this year, encompassing all 5 world languages. Old Bridge Middle School's Junior World Language Honor Society inducted 160 students in all 5 world languages. Old Bridge High School Middle School Teacher of German, Linda Costa, was selected as Outstanding Middle School German Teacher for the 21-22 school year by Goethe Institute and GAPP organization. Old Bridge High School French and German AP courses offered additional College Board community service credit hours. Our students conducted beach cleanup, community beautification projects, and students teaching students peer classes toward earning AP credits. Our English language learner scaffolding strategies workshop was recently provided for all middle school ELL staff and related staff who service our students. Talking Points, a translation service, was provided for families district-wide. Old Bridge High School Indoor Percussion took second place silver medal WGI World Champions at Dayton, Ohio. Elementary students of art recognized for state and national achievement through the Partnership for a Drug-Free New Jersey poster contest. Art teacher Laura McHugh was the supervisor of these students. Presley Gonzalez, Darasa Debiva, I'm not sure I got that one right, Lily Siprich, Quinn Gillespie, and Somaya Kahl received recognition. Old Bridge Elks Lodge Drug Awareness Poster Contest under the supervision of art teacher Justine Heredia. The following students were recognized: Lodge Champion Justin Hernandez, first place Jacob Cintron, second place Elvis Veselovsky, and third place Jamie Kapitsky. A music appreciation class was offered at the GNC this year. Athletics. Fall athletics. Boys soccer held Red Division champions. Girls soccer made it to the semifinals of the county tournament. Cheerleading, GMC champions, game day competition. Boys and girls cross country took third in the GMC championships. Football, Red Division champions. Girls volleyball made it to the semifinals of the county tournament. Gymnastics, third place in the GMC championships. Amanda Schuerman was the state champion in the balance beam. 35 athletes made the all-division or all-conference team in the fall season. Coach Chris McGrath was named Coach of the Year for boys soccer. Winter athletics. Cheerleading took first place at the Hunterdon Central competition and won a bid to nationals. Wrestling, third place in the GMC championships. Gabby Miller was the state champion for girls wrestling. Boys winter track, 4x400, took first place at the Group 4 sectional championships. Girls winter track, third place in the GMC relay championships. Girls swimming, GMC conference champions. 3 conference records and 8 school records were broken throughout the season. 33 athletes made the all-division or all-conference team in the winter season, and Coach John Post was named Coach of the Year for wrestling. Spring, so far. Softball has a 10-2 record and looking to have a top seed in the county state playoffs. Girls lacrosse, undefeated so far this season and looking to be the #1 seed in the county tournament. Boys lacrosse, currently in first place in the Red Division and looking to be the first seed in the county tournament. Boys volleyball is on their way to win their 4th straight New Jersey State Championship. Boys track, 4x400, won their heat at the Penn Relays, 6th fastest time in New Jersey. And girls spring track, 4x400, took 3rd place at the Penn Relays. Okay, budget priorities for the 2022-23 school year. Children learning in safe and healthy educational environments is our top priority. Expanding on multiple learning platforms as needed with equipment, software, and professional development. establish learning labs at Sauk, Sandburg, GNC, and Old Bridge High School, establish equitable, competitive esports opportunities at the secondary level, maintain successful programs while continuing to deal with S2 and Chapter 44 fiscal realities, continue to offer clinical therapeutic support for at-risk students, meet the educational, social, emotional, and physical needs of all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hooker. Quite an impressive list. This slide, which is called appropriations, I've summarized the budget into 7 categories. However, overall, the district is budgeting 2.48% less in spending for 22-23. Program costs, which is the first line item I will discuss last. The employee benefits line, which is approximately 19% of the budget, contains costs for health, prescription, dental, and vision insurance for all employees. It also includes workers' comp insurance, pension, liabilities of the district, payroll taxes, and other employee benefits. The maintenance and operation line, back up. So the projected decrease in employee benefits of 6.17% is principally due to statutory changes to the benefit programs and employee benefit contributions and staff reductions. Dental and vision insurance premiums are being renewed for 22-23 with no increase. The maintenance and operation line, which is 11% of the budget, contains all costs for required maintenance, snow removal, custodial services, security booths that we have, and energy costs throughout the district. The transportation line, which is about 8% of the budget, contains costs for salaries to operate a fleet of approximately 50 of our own buses, another 50 of contracted services or outside vendors that provide daily busing for our students. We presently transport about 8,500 students daily to and from school. It also includes fuel for our buses, maintenance, and administration of the entire transportation operation. This particular line item, if you look, it was projected to rise almost 20%. These costs are significantly higher as a result of increased fuel charges, bus driver shortages, and contractor bid proposals in that environment. The administrative cost line, which is about 6% of the budget, contains costs for the staffing of all the main offices of the schools. That's the school principals and the secretaries, the superintendent's office, the business office, and district-wide technology. The tuition line, which is approximately 3% of the budget, is for out-of-district private placements and for tuition for students that attend vocational schools. And finally, capital outlay, which is a very small portion of this budget, contains costs for facility upgrades, SDA assessments, and from a previous referendum, which I will go into more detail a little later. The next slide, which is the detail of the program cost line. Now, generally, I do a very detailed discussion on this particular line, but this year, with the reduction of $2.5 million, I'm just going to summarize by saying these reductions have been achieved by reducing and consolidating staff in our operations and also reducing outside contracted services. The capital outlay line. This slide is a summary of capital expenditures included in the 22-23 budget. As a result of the state aid uncertainties up until March of this year, there are no long-range facility projects planned for 22-23. However, if projects arise during the year, the board by resolution can authorize us to transfer money from the capital reserve accounts during the year to fund any projects that may come up during the year. The next two items, the SD assessment is for an annual fee that we're required to pay for a referendum which was done in the early 2000s. This is an annual fee that never seems to go away. And the $5,000 capital reserve transfer, again, is a number that is required by statute. And I skipped the top line number, the $325,924. Those are funds that are left over from prior year projects that will be returned to capital reserve. In other words, we overestimated the cost of those projects and we didn't spend enough money. We didn't spend all that money. The next page is just a pie presentation of the $150.4 million budget that's being proposed here. Programmatic costs are 52%, employee benefits 19%, maintenance and transportation another 19%, and that's approximately 90% of the budget. The other 10% is administrative cost and out-of-district or tuition costs for out-of-district and vocational students. Unusual and notable items in this budget. This budget maintains all existing instructional programs, maintenance and security protocols despite a significant decrease in state aid. Health premium cost reductions in 22-23. There are projected significant increase in transportation costs, and this budget includes shifting of funding for recurring costs to ESSER funds to offset the impact of S2 cuts and potential Chapter 44 cuts. On the revenue side, this year we lost $3,350,000 in state aid. I'm sorry, next year we're losing $3,350,000 in state aid. This year we lost $6,112,000, and despite that reduction, just put that in thinking of all the accomplishments that we've made with a $6 million state aid reduction. It's fantastic. We are using this year, in 22-23, $7.6 million of reserves to cover the 22-23 budget. In 21-22, we used $8 million. These reserves are a result of prior year unbudgeted revenue received, unspent appropriations that exceeded the allowable 4% reserves of the district's annual expenditures. We are using $159,000 of capital reserve next year to cover the SDA assessment. That's a new ruling that allows us to use that capital reserve funds to fund that annual fee that the state has been charging us. We're using $920,000 to supplement our maintenance, or to implement our required maintenance in the district. And again, we have the $500,000 a year Cheesequake lease agreement that is significantly helping the district. We have no bank cap or automatic cap adjustments reflected in this budget. The next page, revenue. The first item on the general fund revenue page is called budgeted fund balance. When a district approves its budget, the budget is a tool to manage the district finances, and it contains numerous estimates of revenue and expenditures. Again, if the revenue received exceeds revenue budgeted, that excess revenue has to go into fund balance. If actual expenses paid are less than expenses appropriated, that unspent money goes back into fund balance. The district may maintain 4% of the previous year's expenditures in fund balance called unrestricted fund balance. Effectively, that is a savings account for the school district. And anything over that amount has to be transferred by board resolution in June of each year to capital reserve, maintenance reserve, or emergency reserve, or it's returned to the taxpayer in the form of budgeted fund balance, this first line that I'm talking about, or revenue in the subsequent year. So we do not, anything beyond the 4% we cannot keep. we need to give it back to the subsequent year, or include it in the subsequent year budget as a revenue item. The reserve withdrawal line represents the $920,000 that we're taking out of maintenance reserve next year, plus the $159,000 we're using to pay the SDA assessment. The local tax levy is, the local tax levy line is the assessment to local taxpayer, and this proposed budget contains a 2% increase, and this 2% increase is mandated by statute this year. This rule that is in effect changes every year. Last year, or this year, 21-22, it was not mandated that we do 2%. The year before, it was mandated that we do 2%, and now next year, it is mandated that we do 2% again. This is all a function of the new state funding formula that was created the first year of the Murphy administration, and it's a moving target, and it's impossible to really predict where you are and what will happen in the subsequent year in terms of the state aid. The state aid line has decreased by 10.4%, or $3,350,000 from this year. The state has and will continue to drastically reduce our state aid for the foreseeable future. For 2022 and 23, the state aid is approximately $28.8 million, and the formula says, the funding formula of the state says that the state aid should be $26.1 million. So their position is we're being overfunded by the state. The state funding formula also calculates that the Old Bridge taxpayer should be paying approximately $120 million in local tax levy, and we're only paying $109 million. This budget proposes $109 million. They're saying, according to their formula, it should be $120 million. As long as this formula calculates this, we are receiving too much state aid and the local tax levy is too low, we should expect unpredictable state aid reductions in the future. You may have heard the term S2 district, and any district with this scenario I just described is considered an S2 district, subject to unpredictable state aid reductions. So to give you an example, 2 years ago, we had a state aid reduction of $3 million. This year, we had a state aid reduction of $6 million, and now next year, we have a state aid reduction of $3 million. There's no reason, there's no rhyme or reason to how this happens. And in this particular budget, the state aid calculation concluded that the state aid should only be $20 million, but for 22-23, their calculation is that the state aid should have been $26 million. So it's a moving target that nobody seems to figure out. And there's a number of school districts that have sued the state, and within the next 12 to 18 months, we may know how these calculations are made, but at this point, we do not know how they're made. The other state aid line includes extraordinary aid received for special needs students. This aid is not guaranteed. However, state guidance recommends that S2 districts that are losing state aid use this revenue line to cover a portion of the reduction of the state aid if necessary. It is necessary in 22-23. The other revenue line is any other revenue that cannot be categorized in any of the above categories. Examples are lease income, interest income, facilities fees, cell tower revenue, tuition revenue, and refunds from prior years. The lease of Cheesequake School to the Sayreville Board of Education is included in this particular line. The next page, which is the 22-23 tax rate calculation, there's just a few places I'll point to. The tax at the bottom of the page, the tax rateable increase that means the value of all our properties in the township increased by $5,778,000. When that happens, the spreading of the tax levy is minimized to the local taxpayer. The local tax levy, again, is $109,187,583. And at the very bottom of the page, you'll see that tax levy increase will result in an $83.18 increase in the local taxes for the taxpayer per year, or $6.93 per month. That's all I have from the financial side. I will turn it back to Mr. Cittadino for a summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mara, for a very detailed and revealing review of the budget. So the summary of this budget. What is our intentions and where do we go with it? The budget proposed for the 2022-23 school year supports educational programs despite reductions in state aid. Supports healthy learning environments across all of our schools. Provides funding to ensure all curriculum and resources are aligned with state standards and executive orders. Supports the tenets of the community-driven Mission 2022 strategic plan as the board continues the process to develop a successor strategic plan. Maintains technology that is necessary to support the changing landscape of student learning. Provides academic, social, and emotional support mechanisms for all learners regardless of their talents and abilities. The budget reflects the mandatory requirements of the S2 legislation and local generated revenue streams. Thank you very much for your attention during this presentation.
Mr. Miller, just let me mention, so after the budget is approved, this presentation will be on the district website, and within 48 hours, the user-friendly budget will also be posted on the website. Thank you.
I will open to hearing of the residents on agenda items only, which in this case is the budget only. Are there any questions, hands?
Hi, good evening. Hi, Stephanie Babbitts. Mr. Mara, I had a question for you. I heard you say something about, and I'm just looking up Old Bridge here. First, for the state aid for special education. So Old Bridge is receiving $5.572 million. And I believe, can you just clarify, I thought I heard you say that you're authorized to use some of that money to offset the other money, or, I don't know.
I believe the $5.5 million that you're representing is IDEA money. This is not IDEA money.
It's the state, it's under state aid. It's the state aid line for.
No, but you're referencing $5.5 million?
Yeah, I'm looking at from the New Jersey Department of Education, from their website, the breakdown. So transportation aid is 1.049 million. Special education aid is 5.572 million. Security aid, $835,366. And then fiscal year 23, K-12 aid is 28.879 million for a loss of 3.35 million. It's the same line. It's the
Yes.
line I'm looking at.
So I'm sorry, so that is
So the 5.57, and maybe Dr. Tui, you can clarify this too, it says the special education aid, and I thought I heard you say before, I thought I just heard you say something about that that you're authorized to use some of the aid for special education toward to offset the rest of the money that we're losing. So I just wanted clarification on that.
I understand your question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the $28.1 million is the aggregate amount of state aid that we get, that they advise, and included in that state aid are all those pieces that you just mentioned. The line item that I discussed related to the extraordinary aid is in addition to the $28.1 million. It's outside of that,
Okay.
and it's never guaranteed. So what happens with with extraordinary aid is that after we go through the entire year, in May, Dr. Tui's office puts together a schedule of costs related to every student where those costs exceed approximately $50,000, and excluding transportation costs. And we submit all that information in an extraordinary aid application to the state, and then they advise us at the end of May or in June that this is the money that we'll be getting for extraordinary aid, which is outside, it's over and above the $28.1 million. However, it's not guaranteed. So prior to S2, the state would always recommend that you minimize the amount of money that you budgeted for extraordinary aid. But since S2, they're requesting that we use as much of it to make the budget work as possible. So there are two different pieces. $28 million one includes special ed aid, transportation aid, at-risk aid and general aid. This is over and above that.
Thank you for
Got it.
clarifying. But that extraordinary aid, it is inclusive, is it all, is it special education? That extraordinary aid is special
The
education?
extraordinary aid is for the students that we expend, on average, over $50,000. And what gets shared with the state is the cost over 50. So if the costs are $80,000, so the difference between 80 and 50, we may get 50% of the difference. We don't get the full amount, but the first ceiling, or the first floor that has to be reached is the $50,000 minimum cost. Anything beyond that, and then this excludes transportation, there is an opportunity to get a reimbursement for that from the state, which generally could be up to 50% of that money.
Okay, thank you. And that would, I mean, maybe the day will come when we'll fully fund IDEA, but we're not even there, so. Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Richard Dunn, 58 Norman Lane. Just want to take this time to commend the Board of Education. I know it's far and few times that they can get commended, but quite honestly, looking at this budget this evening, it's a very sound budget. It's a very thoroughly thought out budget because quite honestly, there's no programs that are being cut. And that's our biggest fear, is cutting our incredible programs that have made Old Bridge Public Schools the finest in the state of New Jersey as far as I'm concerned. So Joe Mara, David Cedadino, Dr. Hoker, the entire Board of Education should be commended for putting together a sound budget that maintains our incredible programs. Yes, I understand that the majority of the cuts are coming from staffing reductions, and hopefully that's through attrition. But I saw no programs which were being cut, which is an extraordinary thing. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for you to work together as a collective unit, hopefully. I am going to sincerely request that this budget be approved unanimously. I think that it's in the best for Old Bridge for this budget to move forward. Regarding the planetarium and the curator, I think it's a very worthwhile position. And as we know, between the 5 months between the budgets being submitted to the county and the start of the new school year, there's usually going to be many more retirements that we didn't anticipate. So there'll be some breakage there that can help fund these type of programs that the community would like preserved. With that said, is there any other programs that you would like to increase, positions you'd like to maintain with additional breakage? We know that we are looking in a crystal ball, but we know that breakage does occur where we could get a few $100,000 of additional monies that were not budgeted, and that could be utilized to preserve other areas of the budget. With that said, my final question would be, do we have a total number of staff reductions in the budget? It was not delineated, so I just would like to know how many staff is being reduced, how many individuals. I know through attrition, retirements, we would try to backfill and keep employees, but what is the total number of employees being riffed or not rehired back or not coming back? Again, I want to sincerely thank the entire board and the Board of Education, the administration for doing an incredible job, and I sincerely commend everyone for the hard work, because as we know, it's a thankless position. Everyone always likes to criticize the board, but this time I think everyone did a wonderful job, and thank you again.
Good evening. I'd like to, Chris Lenegro, Vice President, Old Bridge Education Association. We'd just like to thank the board for all your hard work and everything that you do. And based on what I talked about last week about the curator of the Planetarium, the Planetarium program, I really have to thank you very much for all of your responses to the emails that we got. Sorry, my voice is scratchy. It's track season, as you could tell. But I really have to thank you very much for all the work that you guys did, and for the curator for the Planetarium. I thank you very much for your responses to your emails. I didn't respond to all of you personally. I'm glad that the program is going to maintain the effectiveness that it has. I forwarded you guys a bunch of the emails, and we thank you very much for what you've done, and we're hoping that you guys could keep maintaining the resources that we've had. I just wanted to say thank you for responding and listening to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who cares to speak? If not, I will close the public session.
Mr. Weber, Dr. Hoger, do you want to respond to Mr. Dunn's question since we've closed the public hearing?
There are approximately 16 staff members that there are not positions for next year. With additional retirements, if we're able to call back some of, or post for positions that become open over the summer, some of those particular individuals could end up returning to the district.
So we have the item 1, that's the only thing, the budget.
Item number 1.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve item number 1, which is the 2022-2023 school year budget?
Callie, I'll move.
Is there a second?
Lens will oh. You go, Matt, you go for it.
Okay. All right.
I second it.
Discussion by board members?
Yes, I was going to vote no on the budget. But then I'm thinking, you know, if we go to the county, you're just going to stall things for another month or two. And the windup is, they're going to tell us to cut $1 million, $500,000. So I'm going to go along with this budget. I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to thank Mr. Mara and his office at CJ and everybody else that, worked so hard to put this together, Dr. Hoker and Mr. Cittadino. I know, through, it's a lot of work. Sorry, I'm stumbling, very tired. And I just wanted to say thank you, and I am going to be supporting the budget.
Yes. One of the things I liked was the reduction of the capital projects. I know I've been outspoken about spending money on projects we don't necessarily need. And as you can see, there's 6 board members, and I know Ms. Burns, Jay Slade, and Mr. Caro, if she was still on the board, they would approve the budget. So I feel that I should vote for them by proxy, being that they're not here. But we need 5, so we are allowed 1 no. So if anyone else has any logical objection to the budget, they could have what would be my abstention or no vote. In general, with the budget, it is frustrating that the grant money we have can be used for new infrastructure, like the makerspace, but things like the planetarium and things like that, we aren't allowed to spend money on that. And something that will save parents a lot of money is the dual enrollment that's being implemented, and in 1 or 2 years, it's going to allow high school students to basically get their degree in 2 years. So that's going to save parents easily thousands of dollars. And I did get emails about the planetarium shutting down, but I did not get any emails not to support the budget. So I would support it, seeing that there's no objection from the public, but we're still allowed 1 no vote, so we'll see who takes it.
I will support the budget, but I also will note something for the people who have moved in town since 2008 and 9, and they don't necessarily know the history of the position that we're in financially. All of this budget process, and that went on for years and years, took place in state government based on a law decision, Abbott versus Burke, settled in 1978.
For the first time, yes.
For the first time. And ever since that time, the state's legislature has gone back and forth in trying to find the perfect funding formula for all the various districts that are in the state. The Abbott districts, which are the ones who benefited from a financial state, more than anywhere in the state. That would include Jersey City, Newark, and any of the big urban towns. So this took 8 or 10 years. Now they developed this formula. It started under Governor Corzine and went through the Christie administration and got resolved then. And they put it in effect in 2008-2009 school year. And in our case, it was called equalization formula. There were a lot of districts that were in that. In our case, we had already peaked in our enrollment in this district in 2004 and 5, and each year after that, we were losing students, and we continue to lose students up to today. And so the state was very late to the game. Apparently, they didn't inspect, they didn't do their research, and this is my conclusion after watching it diligently. And they gave too much money to 177 districts, because 11 years later, after it's in effect, they realized they were giving too much money under the system they had set up. And in our case, and the other 167 districts, the state came back in 2018-19, which is the 11th year that this formula was in place, and they took back money which they said we should not ever have gotten. As I said, we were not, there are roughly 575 operating districts in the state, is that correct, roughly? A little more than that. A little more than that. But this is almost a third of the districts that the state has this formula on. Mr. Cittadino was not here in this position that he's in. This was dumped on the Old Bridge School District. And as you see, this year, based on page 18, the state is taking away their number is reduced. They took $3.3 million away, correct, Joe? And our revenue raised by that 2% increase is a little more than $2 million. We have 2 more years after this budget, and there are so many variables that we need to worry about. For example, all the things that are subject to our rampant inflation right now, it's a smaller part of the budget, but it's going to be all money that we don't anticipate how we're going to cover it. So what I'm suggesting is we have to be very, very diligent as an administration, as a Board of Education, to make sure that we do things that are as efficiently done as possible, that can consider consolidation down the road, which will obviously save money. But that's not going to happen overnight. That could take 3 to 5 years to do it, and it may have to go out to referendum. So I just want to make the public aware that this is going to go on for at least 2 more years, and we will be in a much weaker financial position than we have been in the last 20 years, Joe, would you say?
Let me just comment by saying it, as I said before, it's really difficult to know what the funding formula will generate just by what has happened
Correct.
over the last 3 years. So 2 years ago, we lost $3 million. This year, we lost $6 million. Next year, we're losing $3 million. If the calculation remains that the state aid should be $26 million next year, and we're presently at $28 million, the reduction next year will be 75% of the difference. So if so that would only be, $2 million times 75%, so it could be a much less number. However, if the state aid calculation, which is the one that they did this year, says that the state aid should be only $20 million, they compare that to the $28 million, and then the state aid reduction would be 75% of that number next year. So, but we just don't know. We don't know where it's going.
And that's why, and how much money was saved by the schools being closed or not operating the same way over the time period of that?
Over a 2-year period, $20 million.
So I would be correct in assuming that if we had been open and there had not been COVID, we would have been in a lot of trouble.
We would have managed it.
Okay. I have complete confidence in you, Joe, but I'm just saying it's still $19 million. So I just want to make you aware for that, and I certainly will be supporting it as well.
I'm just, because when Mr. Weber started speaking about he was going to urge the new people moving to town, I thought you were going to ask people to start having children, because that would really fix the problem. So I was going to suggest...
Well, listen, we know warehouses don't have children, so
we could propose in the budget maybe a Bala Rianiti and a Keith Sweat CD, and see if we can help it along.
Yeah, by the way, there is this kind of simple rule, Joe, for people who are not as astute as you are. When you lose enrollment, you lose state aid. When you gain enrollment, you generally gain state aid, correct?
That's a very simplified
Well, I'm a simple
answer.
man.
So, no, but it's not that simple. So what happens is, and again, I've said this also.
Just touch
this-
upon, Joe, I just don't interrupt, just touch upon the adjustment aid, because that's something that was left out.
Okay.
So it wasn't like they weren't paying attention because they were putting
here's-
adjustment aid in.
So, and I'll just, this will only take 2 minutes. So, when the Corazine formula was implemented in 2008, I was a BA then. And the formula basically said that this is what every district would get on the basis of enrollment, wealth of the district, and the ratables in the district. However, I think that was based on a model school district that had approximately 5,000 students in it. And I think that administration had the wisdom of knowing that there are other factors like our district where we're 40 square miles, we have 17 schools that are built 50 or 60 years ago. And by doing that, they created a formula to try to create equity, but they also included adjustment aid for districts like us that had unusual circumstances. We have schools that have capacity of 300. They have other districts where we have schools that have capacities of 800. So I think they had the wisdom to include the adjustment aid in there year after year. So I'm not one that will say that we got money that we shouldn't have received. I'm one that would say that the funding formula prior to the Murphy funding formula had a mechanism in it to not hurt districts. Then when the Sweeney Murphy formula was implemented, they took that adjustment away. So, and then they're whacking us. I don't know how else to describe it. And then we went to them and we told them that this is what's happening. We're 40 square miles, we have 50 buses, we have small schools. It would take 20 years for us to build new schools. It fell on deaf ears. So I don't feel that we received less money that we should have, because I think the prior formula had that adjustment in there to recognize that every big district like ours is different. Now, there was too much money definitely going to the Abbott districts, but I think in our case, if that adjustment aid continued, at least over a period of 10 or 15 years, it'd be much easier to deal with than it is the way it's happening.
Thank you. Seeing no other further discussion, I'm sorry, Lisa?
I just want to say a couple things. A, I don't have to follow Mr. Cittadino encouraging people to have babies. And B, us as board members, it's never easy to look at a budget and try to figure out what should be cut, whether it's a position, a program, or anything. And so I truly appreciate Joe and his office and all the hard work that they put into it, because it's not easy. It's not easy, putting it together and deciding the fate, because you don't want to cut any program and you don't want to cut any position. But as anyone who budgeted their household finances realizes, at some point something has to give, and you have to just try to do your best to figure it out. And I think I appreciate everyone's emails on the Planetarium, but it's good just to remember that we are all up here just trying our best. And I truly appreciate, like I mentioned, Joe and his office doing their best and putting together a solid budget. So although Sal has offered his no, I plan on supporting the budget.
Wait. No, I just have something else to say, because I am bringing up things. In 2 legislative sessions, I brought up the law that would allow us to use our capital reserves for general expense items. I know we're going to be getting $10 million from the Nike base, and as far as I know, we can't spend that on educational programs. It has to be used on capital reserves. Same thing, I emailed the legislator about the 2% tax increase. I tried to fight against that, but again, that's not under our control. And eventually, if the state aid cuts are going to continue, eventually we are going to have to cut programs or find a certain way, because you can only increase taxes so much. So obviously, during this next year, we are going to have to try to figure that out. And just to respond to Mrs. Lent, so as long as the whole dais doesn't have any objections, other things that we can control, because I know the things we could control, I think we did a good job at. We're not cutting anything, but I hate unanimous votes, and I think even though we are united, we still have to make our voices heard of some things that we disapprove of. So if there's no board member that is going to vote no, I'll take the heat for it. all right? Yeah, got it.
By the way, just before the roll is taken, the Township of Old Bridge has about $3.5 billion of ratables in this town. We have 68,000 people. South Brunswick, on the other hand, has 45,000 people, and they have $7 million in ratables. That's because of all of the commercial ratables that they have. They have the luxury of being right off the turnpike, which attracts, and they're similar size and mileage, which attracts all those ratables. So the ratables that we are adding in town that don't generate students do help us, but it'll be a long time before we get in the plush position that South Brunswick's in.
Ms. Callie?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Pass.
Ms. Lent?
Yes.
Mr. Marqueta?
Yes.
Mr. Solikowski?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
No.
The budget passes. Thank you.
Open to any board topic. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion. Is there a motion to adjourn? But we are going to go into closed session, which we are not going to return from. I want to make you aware of that, and we'll entertain a motion to do so.
Yeah, just for matters of facilities and attorney-client privilege.
All right. I'll move it. Is there a
Lent will second.
Roll call.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're going into executive session at 8:41. Yeah. So what were the reasons, attorney-client and?